the movement on the one big beautiful bill in the Senate is the executive vice president of the National Taxpayers Union, Brandon Arnold. Thanks for the time tonight.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so what do you make of this? We can't even get the Senate to agree that people in the country illegally should not be getting millions and millions of dollars in Medicaid funding.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty disappointing. That seems like pretty low bar to clear. We're talking about cleaning up our fiscal mess that we have on our hands. Step one should be people that are here illegally, people that should not be receiving benefits. Let's not give them benefits anymore. Let's not write checks to people who are not eligible to receive them, whether those are people that are here illegally, people who can work but choose not to for whatever reason. You know, those people should not be getting the welfare payments, the Medicaid payments, you name it. We need to clean up our fiscal mess, and that's where it should start.
You know, I have been a voice against this $1,000 baby bond thing because if we don't even know what a citizen is, why are we going to be handing out $1,000 to anyone born in the United States? Chinese birth tourism, people who may just come across the border from another country to give birth, then go back and then watch their account grow, right? We, the taxpayer, have given their kid an interest-bearing account, which they assume will be at $170,000 when that child turns 18. But I also understand that a potential 70% tax increase would be disastrous at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I think we do need to incentivize saving because our national savings rate is incredibly low. We have a disturbing number of people in this country that if their HVAC system blew during this hot summer, they wouldn't be able to afford to replace it because they don't have enough money in the bank. That's concerning, but I don't think this baby bond is the right approach. I think we need to have a more robust system, a unified system of saving instead of this fragmented system that we currently have. But yeah, at the end of the day, the big picture, as Senator Mullen pointed out, is we're facing a potential $4 trillion tax increase at the end of this year. We need to avert that. We need to improve our tax code. There's a lot of stuff in this bill that I'm not crazy about, but I think it is fundamentally pointed in the right direction. Better tax policy, a little more work we could do on the deficit side in terms of spending cuts, in my opinion, though.
Is that for next year? Right, this is the first year of the second Trump presidency that we have to deal with, the cards that are dealt, and then going into the next year, then they could really make the cuts, really take out the waste, fraud, and abuse, really reduce the spending, or am I just being naive?
Well, I think there's some truth to what you're saying, but at the same time, I think we should do as much as we possibly can in this bill because we know this bill has to get passed. We know this bill is going to the president's desk eventually. So let's put as much in the way of spending cuts as we possibly can. And then let's look forward. We have the rescissions package. It's about $9 billion. It's not big, but it's already passed the House. It needs to pass the Senate once they wrap up this bill. That'll start to develop the muscle memory that Congress needs. They can cut spending and the sky will not fall. The world will not stop spinning. Things will carry on if we're making modest, reasonable cuts to the size of the federal budget. So let's start here with as much as we can squeeze into the one big beautiful bill. Let's move on to rescissions. And then, yes, let's rotate. Let's move ahead and let's keep cutting spending, getting rid of the waste, fat, and fraud and abuse and all those things that plague the budget.
You know, this is one of the problems is Republicans run on doing Republican things. Then when they win, they don't do those Republican things. Democrats do. If Democrats say we're going to do this and they win, they do that thing. It seems like ever since the Tea Party, Republicans balk at doing the things they all campaigned on doing. Right? We've been hearing we got to cut the waste, fraud, and abuse. We got to shrink the size of government. We got to lower the expenditures. We got to stop the spending. And then some analysis say that this might add $3.3 trillion over a decade to the debt. So why can't Republicans do the thing that Republicans say they want to do? And then when people say, yeah, go ahead and do it, they go, well, we know we got to slow down here. We got to, we got to take this bit by bit and piece by piece. The country said to you, get in there and cut the spending.
Yeah, when you talk to people in the grassroots, it's a completely different conversation than what takes place here in Washington. People want to see spending cuts. Of course, it's a difficult process, and I think that's why Congress hasn't rolled up their sleeves and done it as much as they ought to. But yeah, that difficult process is necessary to save our country from fiscal collapse. You talk about a country like Greece, they could borrow money cheaply. They could borrow money cheaply. They could borrow money cheaply. And then all of a sudden they couldn't borrow money at all, no matter how much money they're willing to spend to float that debt. That could happen to us. We're $37 trillion in debt with multi-trillion-dollar deficits as far as the eye can see. So this is a point where we have to stop taking those sacred cows off the table. Stop saying we're not going to touch Medicare. Stop saying we're not going to touch Social Security, defense, you name it. Everything needs to be on the budget because we know there's waste, fraud, and abuse in every single program in the federal government, even the popular big ones.
You think Republicans maybe spend too much time in Washington? I mean, that's their industry, right? That's their industry. That's the culture. That's the society of Washington, D.C., the government. I've always said on my radio program, I say it here, the first mission of a bureaucracy is not whatever they're tasked with. It's maintaining the bureaucracy, right? Whether it's the DOD or the Department of Education, whatever, bureaucrats will protect their turf. And if you are spending most of your time in Washington, your neighbors probably work at federal agencies or probably working at think tanks. You want to be liked. You want to go on the Sunday morning talk shows. You want to be invited to the cocktail parties. Maybe Republicans should get out of Washington when they do these things.
Yeah, I agree. The longer members serve in Congress, the more likely they are to be supporting the status quo, business as usual. The less likely there are to be those disruptors that are actually trying to mix things up and ask tough questions of the bureaucrats, of the folks who run these agencies. So I agree. We need more churn in our legislature. We need more young people entering into to public service in the form of members of Congress. Yeah, we need a little bit more turnover here. I think that's why the term limit movement is so popular, because people see that the longer members of Congress stick around here in Washington, the more likely they are to smell the marble, as they like to say, and kind of buy into the status quo that government's just automatically going to grow and there's nothing we can do about it. Guess what? There is something we can do about it. It just takes some members of Congress with a little courage and gumption.
Well, we had Doge, and we could have had, each agency head submit a budget with 5-10% less than last year. That might have worked. All right, I got to leave it there. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.